good morning, either on a Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, depending on what day you attend class. Um, if you're watching this on a Tuesday morning, it means you have a quiz tomorrow on the Hebrews. If you're watching this on a Wednesday morning, you already had your quiz on the Hebrews and hopefully you studied. So, let's talk a little bit about India. I'm going to label this part of your notes India. India is something called a subcontinent, or the Indian subcontinent, I should say, where it is such a large part of a continent that if the tectonic plates theory is correct, basically India started way down south. The Indian subcontinent did, which includes a lot of countries, but in ancient times it was pretty much the Indian culture. And it, through tectonic plate movement, it's made its way up and collided with Asia and made the Himalayan mountains. And I'll show you probably what I mean in person from that. But that's why it's called a subcontinent, because it's a large landmass that's part of a larger continent. It contains mountains like the Himalayan mountains, which is in the country of Nepal, and into China as well. And there are two major rivers in ancient India. The one we're going to concentrate the most on is the Indus River, which is in the current day country of Pakistan. But in the ancient times, it would have been considered part of ancient India. And then the Gongai River, or the Ganges River, which is in India, and is going to be very sacred and holy to the Hindu faith. Here is the bottom left, that's the Indus River, or part of the Indus River. And then if you look at the map here in the upper left, you see how it's in Pakistan today. We're going to be spending most of our time with the civilizations on that Indus River. And then you have the two right pictures. Those are the Gongai River, the Ganges River, which is holy to Hindus. We'll talk more about that later. So India depends every year, and pretty much you can count on it every year, something called a monsoon. And monsoons are seasonal wind patterns that cause wet and dry seasons. So in the what we would call winter, which is it's never really cold in India. In most parts of India, it's not cold. You get further north and get chilly, I'm sure. But in the winter season, that would what they would call the wet season, and in the summer seasons is what they call the dry season. I believe that's correct. I'm gonna have to look at a map in the book, but I'm pretty sure that was right because the dry air comes down from the Himalayas and the wet air comes from the ocean, and that wet air is going to cause lots and lots of rain, and it can cause flooding, and it can cause a lot of issues. One of my good friends is a missionary in India, and he talks quite a bit about the monsoons and how that sometimes monsoons can cause flooding and a lot of destruction. But they depend on them and they count on them every year. They need them, and they sort of plan for them every single year. Sort of like how in a lot of places in the tropics, they know that there's going to be hurricanes, so they prepare for them. So the first ancient civilization we want to discuss is on the Indus River, or was on the Indus River, and that was the Harappan people. The Harappan people are going to be very similar in a lot of ways to the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians on how that they are going to use irrigation on the Indus River and gather food surpluses and farm and going to do some of the similar early civilization stuff that we've talked about with groups on rivers. Okay, the Harappans were pretty advanced for their time. They had two major cities. One was called Harappa, the other one was called Mohenjo-daro. Now, Mohenjo-daro is a pretty important city for a couple reasons. One, they built the city using right angles on a grid layout system. And you think, well, why is that important? Our cities today are built on a grid layout system with right angles, just like the Harappans. We copied that, and we're still using that thousands and thousands of years later. We'll look at a map later in person about how that's going to be more efficient with space and with streets and things like that. But if you think about it, if you were in a helicopter and you flew over the city of Paducah, and you went downtown, you're going to see how things are in squares, like blocks. Okay, just like in any major city, they're going to be blocks, and that's what the Harappans did. They also were the first to make a toilet system where they would have water flowing underneath some kind of toilet, not like our ivory toilets we have. And the importance of that is that it would bring the waste out of the city. Because if you think about it, if human feces is left in the water source, it's going to cause disease. So why that's important is they got the waste out of the city for health. They figured out that that was going to make them healthy. We, as Americans, didn't start really figuring that out until much later. Our cities in the 1800s were dirty, nasty, yuck. We would go in chamber pots, but they figured out pretty early that you needed to get waste out of the city and get it out of your water source. Pretty ingenious. The Harappans disappeared, though. We really don't know what happened to the Harappan people, the Harappan civilization. There's a lot of theories out there. Probably it could have been a natural disaster, could have been an invasion by another group, which probably is what happened, where they intermarried. But the unique thing about it is a lot of their cities, like Mohenjo-Daro, had no signs of destruction. Some say that they actually had to move because their sand or their soil got too salty. There's crazy theories like aliens came down and abducted them. But they disappeared. We don't know really what happened. We do know the civilization that comes after them, and we'll get more to that on Thursday or Friday. So go ahead and start these notes, and we'll continue with our lesson later this week.